Hello and welcome to Science and Sleep, where dreams meet knowledge and scientific stories become a soothing remedy for the mind. Here, we don't rush to chase the world, but instead slow down together, listen to the whispers of the universe, and explore mysteries that have slumbered for hundreds of millions of years. Tonight, let's travel back to the age of giants, when the ground trembled beneath the footsteps of dinosaurs and the skies still belonged to the winged reptiles. Before we begin this journey, if you're watching from another channel, please visit Science and Sleep and don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and turn on the notification bell, because just one small click from you gives this channel the motivation to keep telling the wondrous stories of the universe. This video is made to help you relax, learn, and gently drift into sleep amidst the wonders of science. So lie back, take a deep breath, and imagine the world 252 million years ago, slowly coming to life, where Earth has just emerged from the greatest extinction in history and is about to enter the glorious age of dinosaurs. When the ash and dust of the Permian finally settled, Earth seemed to awaken from a nightmare that had lasted millions of years. Gone were the dense forests, gone were the lush green plains. Only fields of cracked stone and a dry sky filled with red dust remained. Life still existed, but it was as fragile as the final breath of a candle. The world seemed to be retesting the very concept of existence. Amidst that desolation, new sprouts of life began to rise. Each fern spore, each blade of moss, each tiny seed, they crept between the cracks of the earth, searching for the last traces of moisture after the Great Massacre. It was the reconstruction phase of life, when nature was rewriting the opening chapter of a new book. The small, adaptable creatures were the authors of that chapter. Meanwhile, the supercontinent Pangaea lay still under the harsh sunlight, stretching from pole to pole like a giant scar on the planet's face. In the arid inland regions, the wind carried the scent of iron dust and heat. By day, temperatures could crack the skin of stones, while at night, cold dew forced all creatures to seek shelter. Yet within this hardship, the pioneers of a new era, the early dinosaurs, began to take their first steps. They were not yet the magnificent giants of the Jurassic or Cretaceous that we often imagine. No, these trailblazers were small and swift, like fleeting shadows darting across the scorching ground. Picture a creature no taller than a human's knee, moving on two legs with bright eyes and sharp reflexes, a survival machine sculpted by adversity. Some species, like Herrerasaurus or Eoraptor, were evolution's first experiments in designing agile predators. In truth, the Triassic was not the age of dinosaurs as we tend to think. It was a vast experimental stage where nature was deciding who deserved to stay. The so-called pseudo-crocodiles, ancient ancestors of modern crocodiles, were the true rulers then. Some looked like armored monsters, their scales thick as iron plates, slow but nearly invincible. Others were swift, hunting on two legs with jaws lined with knife-like teeth. They dominated the plains, while dinosaurs still lingered at the fringes. But in the world of evolution, what makes the difference is not always strength, but refinement in design. For dinosaurs, that came from a seemingly small detail, an upright posture. While most reptiles sprawled their legs sideways, making movement slow and exhausting, dinosaurs held their legs directly beneath their bodies like perfect support columns. That structure allowed them to move faster, more enduringly, and most importantly, more efficiently. A small advantage, but over millions of years, it became the lever of an empire. Across the arid northern plains of Pangaea, small dinosaurs hunted insects, lizards, and other small vertebrates. Each of their footsteps was like a sketch in the blueprint of the future. One day, from these creatures only a few meters long, would emerge giants tens of meters tall, their necks reaching treetops and their bodies weighing tens of tons. But at that moment, they were simply small beings surviving the harshest age the planet had ever known. The Triassic world was not just the land of dinosaurs, but a gathering place for countless bizarre creatures, nature's failed experiments. Some looked like dragons with bony crests rising along their backs. Others were hybrids between crocodiles and birds, or were lizards with large sails used to regulate body temperature. Each species was an unfinished evolutionary idea, a rough draft that nature tested and abandoned. Yet within that chaos, the greatest act of creation was taking shape. As time passed, Pangaea began to tremble. The continental plates slowly broke apart, paving the way for new oceans to form. Red rifts opened across the land like scars, and beneath the surface, massive flows of magma surged upward. It was not merely geological disintegration, but the beginning of a new world. The climate gradually became milder, rains returned, and the first lush forests of the Jurassic began to rise. Imagine walking through that forest, not the kind we know today, but one of giant ferns, conifers towering like bell towers, and canopies so high that sunlight trickled down only in loose rays. The air was thick with humidity, the scent of soil and resin, the sound of insects echoing through the mist. On the moss-covered ground, dinosaur footprints pressed deep, marking the first steps of a glorious era. From here, life turned a new page, a chapter of dominance. Enormous herbivorous dinosaurs began to appear, stretching their necks to pluck leaves beyond reach. Meanwhile, cunning carnivores lurked in the shadows, evolving to hunt faster and strike harder. Nature was like a colossal chessboard where each species was a piece striving to survive. And the victor in that game, of course, was the dinosaurs. Yet, when we look back, the true wonder lies not in the gigantic dinosaurs, but in that very first moment, when life rose again from ashes, trembling yet resolute. From that fragile beginning, a new world was born, not through power, but through adaptability, patience, and the fine-tuning of every tiny detail. And so, amid the breath of ancient winds and the roars still echoing in stone, this planet was reborn, not once, but countless times. Every extinction was a rebirth, every ending the beginning of a new era. The world of the Cretaceous period was a more vivid and complex painting than ever before. It was no longer a planet of monotonous coniferous forests, but a multicolored paradise of flowers, fruits, and soft leaves swaying in the wind. Rivers meandered through lush green plains, valleys overflowed with pollen, and in the sky, winged creatures glided like ribbons of silk. This was the age when life had matured, rich, refined, and filled with wondrous interactions among plants, insects, and animals. The emergence of flowering plants was not merely a botanical event, it was a biological revolution. Before that, plants had relied almost entirely on wind or water for reproduction, a blind and random process. Now, with color and fragrance, flowers had struck a deal with insects, birds, and other small creatures in exchange for assurance pollen would reach the right place at the right time. The planet began to bloom in the literal sense, and each blossoming petal was an evolutionary declaration. Cooperation can be stronger than competition. Amid this flourishing scene, dinosaurs still reigned supreme. But now their empire was more diverse than ever. The fields of angiosperms attracted herds of hadrosaurs, gentle duck-billed dinosaurs with narrow heads and flat, shovel-like snouts. As they moved, the ground trembled softly, and the air resonated with sounds from the hollow crests on their heads, echoing like brass horns across the valleys. Perhaps it was how they communicated, calling to mates, warning of predators, or simply marking their presence as a herd. Elsewhere, the ceratopsians, horned dinosaurs, walked with the dignity of ancient warriors. The bony frill behind their heads, edged with vivid red blood vessels, looked both like armor and a symbol of power. When a herd of triceratops moved through a field of flowers, golden pollen glittered in the air, and sunlight reflected off their horns like thousands of gleaming spears. It was not just a spectacle of strength, but of harmony, where evolution had merged beauty and enormity into a balanced dance. But not all were gentle. In this same era, the most infamous predators appeared. Tyrannosaurus rex, the final king of the dinosaurs, was the ultimate perfection of the predatory line. Each step it took made the ground quake, and each time it opened its jaws, it became a living, crushing machine. Its bite was strong enough to shatter bone, and its forward-facing eyes gave it stereoscopic vision, the tool of a supreme hunter. Yet, what made it truly terrifying was not its power, but its intelligence, a creature that could wait, watch, and strike at the perfect moment. Above the skies, the world was changing too. Ancient birds, descendants of feathered dinosaurs, began perfecting the art of flight. Wings that once served for warmth or display had now become instruments of aerial conquest. Early birds, such as Ichthyornis and Hesperornis, could fly long distances, hunt on water, and even dive. Flight was no longer a dream. It was a new survival strategy. And from that moment on, the sky would never again be without wings. The oceans of the Cretaceous were no less magnificent. Beneath the waves, Mosasaurus, distant relatives of lizards, ruled the seas. They grew over 15 meters long, with jagged teeth, hunting prey with powerful tail strokes. Among ancient coral reefs, the long-necked plesiosaurs glided like silver ribbons, while ammonites, shell-spiraled creatures like sea snails, drifted gently, reflecting sunlight through the blue water. Sea, land, and sky, each was its own kingdom, and within each, life was flourishing at its peak. However, behind that abundant scene, Earth was quietly shifting. Tectonic plates continued to move, shallow seas receded, and the climate grew increasingly volatile. At times, massive volcanic eruptions veiled the sun for years, plunging temperatures. Then, suddenly, CO2 rose again and the planet heated up. The cycle repeated like Earth's unstable breathing, signaling that a great event was approaching. And then, on what seemed an ordinary morning, the sky blazed bright. An object from space, the remnant of another world, hurtled down at unimaginable speed, piercing the atmosphere like a falling star carrying annihilation. When it struck the Yucatan Peninsula, the energy released equaled billions of atomic bombs. The impact carved a crater hundreds of kilometers wide, sending a column of fire into the stratosphere. In an instant, the entire world of the Cretaceous ended. Tsunamis, hundreds of meters high, swept across the oceans. Ash covered the sky, blocking sunlight for months. Temperatures plummeted, plants could no longer photosynthesize, and the food chain collapsed. The giants, Triceratops, Hadrosaurs, Tyrannosaurus, fell not to an enemy, but because the sun had gone dark. Yet, in that night of final extinction, a few flickering lights remained. Small, agile, omnivorous creatures, such as early mammals, survived. It was they, not the giants, who would inherit the planet. The empire of the dinosaurs collapsed, but their legacy did not vanish. Every bird that beats its wings today is an echo of scaly ancestors. Every stone, every fossil, every strand of DNA in a sparrow's body whispers a story that evolution never stops. The Cretaceous ended in dust and smoke, but it opened the path for the age of mammals, and for us. Sometimes, to write a new chapter, nature must close the old one, and among the ruins of giants, the smallest creatures began to rebuild the world. Perhaps feathers are one of the most exquisite evolutionary gifts nature has ever created. Each feather is not merely a physical structure, it is evidence of life's endless creativity. At first, those tiny filaments simply helped keep the fragile bodies warm against the cold prehistoric winds. But over time, as life experimented and learned, those filaments changed. They became thicker, longer, more symmetrical, allowing air to glide over them more gracefully. And then, at some point in a distant ancient forest, a small dinosaur flapped its wings, not to fly, but to keep balance while jumping. And then it truly flew. It was in those gentle transitions that nature sowed the seeds for what we call flight, a seemingly impossible ability that became completely logical under the lens of evolution. Feathers did not merely keep warmth or add beauty. They became the bridge between earth and sky, between the heaviness of the body and the yearning to touch the air. What's truly remarkable is that, alongside these external developments, dinosaurs also underwent an inner revolution. Their one-way respiratory system allowed oxygen to flow continuously through the lungs, enabling high efficiency with minimal energy loss. A four-chambered heart, similar to that of birds and mammals, circulated oxygen-rich blood more effectively, helping them move tirelessly, hunt skillfully, or travel tens of kilometers in search of water. These traces remain in fossils, like stone journals that modern science has only begun to decipher. In their world, everything was connected. When small dinosaurs flapped their wings, the gust stirred pollen into the air. When a giant titan swept through the forest, those tiny dust particles traveled afar, seeding new life. From one perspective, dinosaurs helped shape Earth's landscape, not only with their strength, but with their very presence. Yet within that grand picture lay a deep, somber note. About 66 million years ago, the sky suddenly darkened. A massive asteroid over 10 kilometers wide hurtled toward Earth at a speed of more than 70,000 kilometers per hour. The impact, striking what is now the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, released energy equivalent to billions of nuclear bombs. In an instant, part of the planet's surface ignited. Dust and smoke billowed up, blocking sunlight for years. The world of dinosaurs, once vibrant and alive, slowly sank into a cold, dark silence. Plants withered, insects died in masses, and the food chain collapsed. Herbivorous dinosaurs lost their food source, and soon after, the predators vanished as well. Millions of years of survival, billions of lives, ended in a cosmic heartbeat. But strangely, amidst the devastation, some small creatures survived. Tiny birds, descendants of theropod dinosaurs, taking refuge in the few forests that remained. From the ruins of an era, life began anew. Those little birds are proof that not all dinosaurs disappeared. They are still here, in the form of sparrows, kites, and owls we see every day. Every morning's song is a distant echo of an age long gone, a reminder that Earth, no matter how wounded, always finds a way to heal and begin again. Today, scientists find in fossils not just bones and stone, but stories. Stories of adaptation, of survival, of how the death of one era becomes the dawn of another. The extinction of dinosaurs paved the way for the rise of mammals, including humans. Without that impact, perhaps we would never be here, gazing at the sky and telling their story. In truth, the story of dinosaurs is not merely natural history. It is a mirror reflecting ourselves, born, thriving, dominating, and then facing changes beyond our control. Dinosaurs did not vanish because they were weak, but because nature changed faster than they could adapt. And that lesson, after tens of millions of years, remains unchanged. When we look up at the night sky, those twinkling stars are silent witnesses of the past. They saw dinosaurs rise, grow, and disappear. And in that silence, perhaps the universe whispers, nothing truly ends, everything only changes form. Dinosaurs are still here, in the wings of birds gliding across cities, in their genes, in the memory of the planet they once ruled. And so, when you hear a bird singing on a quiet morning, remember that you are hearing the voice of beings who once survived extinction itself. A song of life, echoing from the distant past, as gentle as a lullaby that science is still listening to. If feathers were the outer cloak of dinosaurs, then within them lay an intricate biological machine evolved to near perfection. From their one-way respiratory system and four-chambered heart to their hollow bone structure, everything revealed that these creatures were not simply giant lizards, but organisms optimized for every breath and every movement. Many paleontologists have described them as biological machines balanced between power and energy efficiency, a model that nature spent millions of years testing and refining. Dinosaurs were not merely symbols of size, they were embodiments of efficiency. Imagine a brachiosaurus taller than a three-story building, weighing tens of tons, yet able to lift its head nearly 10 meters high to graze on treetop leaves. To achieve that, its circulatory system had to operate at several times the pressure of a human's, with a heart strong enough to pump blood all the way to its head. Its long neck, composed of more than a dozen vertebrae with hollow interiors, not only allowed it to reach higher, but also reduced weight, like a hollow steel bridge that remains incredibly strong. Meanwhile, its lungs may have contained a network of air sacs extending throughout the body, enabling rapid and efficient gas exchange. That very system also empowered theropods, the two-legged meat-eating dinosaurs that became the ancestors of birds, to dominate the world of predators. Some fossils show that their ribs and vertebrae were connected to air sacs, much like in modern birds. This allowed carnivorous dinosaurs to sustain powerful breathing during the chase. Without pausing to catch their breath, they could run far, hunt long, and recover quickly. If feathers were the mark of beauty, then the respiratory system was the signature of vitality. Yet that biological strength did more than ensure survival. It allowed evolution's creativity to express itself in countless forms. Some species chose the path of gigantism, becoming gentle giants of prehistoric plains. Others took the path of refinement, becoming smaller, lighter, faster, and eventually capable of flight. Each evolutionary step was a natural decision between staying and rising. When one looks at an Archaeopteryx, a primitive bird with teeth and a bony tail, yet possessing fully developed feathers, the boundary between dinosaur and bird seems as thin as mist. It not only flew, but also landed and steered with its tail. Its fossil is like a photograph capturing the moment of transition, when Earth, after hundreds of millions of years, finally gave birth to the first creature able to touch the sky by its own power. However, if we view dinosaurs solely through the lens of biology, we might still miss something. For within each layer of fossil lies a story of emotion and existence. Fossilized footprints reveal species that moved in herds, protected their eggs, or migrated together across rivers. Fossilized eggs show that they brooded their young, sometimes even lining nests with leaves. Some fossils even capture moving scenes, such as a velociraptor and a protoceratops locked together in combat, claws and horns still interlocked after tens of millions of years. Through such evidence, science shows us something simple yet profound. Dinosaurs did not merely live, they lived with connection. They loved, fought, protected, and struggled in their own way. Today, as scientists use X rays and CT scans to reconstruct fossil interiors, we can glimpse traces of soft tissue and even remnants of ancient proteins. Beneath the seemingly lifeless rock, there may still linger a fragment of breath. And perhaps thanks to such technology, we now understand that dinosaurs never truly disappeared. Each time a sparrow flaps its wings or an owl calls into the night, it is the lingering resonance of the Mesozoic era. The DNA of modern birds still preserves over 90% of the genetic traits of their theropod ancestors. The hollow bones, the unidirectional breathing, even the arrangement of wing feathers, all are evolutionary memories still alive around us. Curiously, when we think of extinction, we often imagine death. Yet in the case of dinosaurs, extinction was transformation. Part of them turned to dust. Another part lived on, evolved, and sang. It was not a tragedy, but proof that life always finds a way. In the world of science, perhaps nothing is as cold yet as moving as this. From a dry piece of fossil, one can hear the heartbeat of a creature stilled for tens of millions of years. From a single fossilized feather, one can see the entire Mesozoic sky that once blazed bright. Some say dinosaurs teach us about endings, but perhaps they teach us about transition, that the old can become the foundation for the new, that every loss carries within it a promise of rebirth. And in the morning song of birds, perhaps there's a gentle reminder that life, no matter how many seasons of destruction it endures, continues to sing its eternal song. Behind every feather, every spine, every hollow vertebra lies the story of a creature that knew how to cherish its own body. In the soft glow of sunset filtering through the leaves, a small dinosaur might sit still, using its beak to gently preen each feather, adjusting every tiny quill to keep its outer coat neat and efficient. It was not merely hygiene, it was a way for an individual to send a message to the world. I am here, I am stable, I am strong. That ritual, plucking feathers, dusting off, arranging each strand, was a harmony between instinct and beauty. If someone were to look at that scene without fear, they might find it familiar, like a sparrow meticulously grooming itself at dawn. Interestingly, evolution rarely erases old structures entirely. Instead, it builds upon them. Feathers did not replace scales, and dorsal spines did not disappear even if they once served for thermal regulation. In stegosaurs, the large plates along the spine may have acted as heat regulators, absorbing sunlight or releasing heat into the air, but they also signaled strength, threatened rivals, or attracted mates. In spinosaurs, the tall sail rising from the back of the semi-aquatic reptile could have had multiple functions: thermoregulation, display, or signaling dominance. When we look at such fossils, every explanation may be partly true. They are the outcomes of intersections between biological pressures and social relationships. Indeed, even body size was part of the natural thermal regulation system. Gigantic dinosaurs maintained temperature more slowly due to thermal inertia, meaning that large bodies did not change temperature rapidly under fluctuating conditions. This protected them from heat or cold shocks. Conversely, smaller species were more susceptible to environmental changes, making insulation from feathers or soft skin coverings an essential survival tool. Imagine a herd of massive sauropods moving across the grasslands at dawn, the ground trembling gently beneath each step, their necks arching like bows reaching toward the treetops, their colossal bodies supported by pillar-like legs. But look closer, and you'd realize those legs were not rigid. Fossilized footprints and bone structure data show that their movements were fluid and rhythmic, perfectly adapted to their weight without being lumbering giants. Their bones, filled with air sacs, effectively reduced weight, while a flexible system of muscles and tendons distributed force evenly to the ground. Their long necks, sometimes longer than their bodies, were truly biological cranes, composed of honeycomb-like air-filled vertebrae. This made them lighter than solid structures while remaining strong and flexible. An individual could stretch out to reach high foliage, then lower its head to feed on low plants without moving its massive body. Evolutionarily, this was an energy saving strategy. Instead of relocating the entire body, it only needed to turn its neck to find food. Beyond mechanics, there was dietary strategy. To sustain such enormous bodies on nutrient-poor food like conifers, ferns, or low shrubs, sauropods didn't grind vegetation to pulp. They swallowed large mouthfuls and let their enormous guts process it gradually. Inside them existed an ancient fermentation chamber, where microbes broke down cellulose and fibrous plant matter. While smaller animals needed energy-rich food, sauropods understood that quantity sometimes outweighed quality. By eating continuously for long hours, they ensured enough nutrition to maintain their bulk, repair tissues, and keep growing. Furthermore, their internal physiology, one-way breathing, a powerful circulatory system, and a flexible metabolic rate, meant dinosaurs were not sluggish, lumbering beasts. When hunting or facing harsh environments, they could boost metabolism, tap into reserves, and absorb oxygen more efficiently than most modern reptiles. Under a microscope, fossilized bones reveal tiny growth rings, much like tree rings, showing rapid juvenile growth. In many species, they reached enormous size within just a few youthful years, far beyond what modern reptiles achieve in a lifetime. Chemical isotopes preserved in bones and teeth provide clues about body temperature, diet, and metabolism. Data suggests that many dinosaurs maintained body temperatures more stable than modern reptiles, closer to the regulation seen in mammals or birds. Throughout evolution, feathers were never eliminated. In many species, feathers coexisted with scales. Some had scales on the body, but fine feathers on the head, neck, or limbs. This shows that evolution doesn't discard the old, but blends it with the new. In many cases, hybrid structures, both scaled and feathered, offered multifunctionality: insulation, display, sensation, or aerodynamic support. A small piece of fossilized feather or skin sometimes contains melanosomes, pigment-bearing structures, allowing scientists to reconstruct the ancient colors of plumage. From that, scientific artists can recreate dinosaurs with stripes and iridescence or vibrant crests. Those colors were not meant for human eyes. They might have served to attract mates, warn rivals, or blend into the environment. Through it all, dinosaurs were not passive beings, but engineers of their ecosystems. As sauropod herds moved, they grazed on plants, reshaping vegetation patterns. Hardier, faster growing, or regrowth capable plants gained advantage. A domino effect followed. Plants changed, herbivores changed, and then predators adapted in response. Giant dinosaurs influenced terrain, water flow, and wetlands. They were slow, soft architects of the land. As the final light of day faded and the footsteps of dinosaurs echoed across the plains, their swaying necks and shadowy forms merged with the twilight. It felt as if the ancient breath still resonated through stone. Hollow bones, air sacs, feathers, respiratory systems, all stand as proof that evolution is not merely a journey from simple to complex, but a process of continuous refinement where every detail holds multiple layers of meaning. So when you imagine dinosaurs, don't just see teeth, spines, claws, and hooves. Look deeper within. Imagine each breath, each pulse, each heartbeat beneath the armor. For it is there, in the balance between gravity and grace, between strength and efficiency, that these colossal creatures truly became possible. Under the dim light of dusk, the entire ancient grassland trembles with the footsteps of massive creatures, yet our minds drift toward their subtle beauty. The curved horns, the layered frills, and the interlocking armor plates that seem to preserve the texture of time itself. Among the countless species of dinosaurs, the ceratopsians and ankylosaurs always evoke a sense of grandeur, powerful yet intricately expressive in the body language of evolution. If the sauropods or stegosaurs are the obvious icons of gigantic might, towering and monumental in the food chain, then ceratopsians chose another path, not to dominate through height, but through horns, frills, and the geometry of their skulls. The three-horned Triceratops has long held a special place in our imagination, but its relatives were no less diverse, from the smaller Protoceratops to those with jagged, spiked, or elegantly curved frill edges. The horns and frills appear to be evolution's canvas, serving as tools of combat, symbols of social display, individual signals, or shields against predators. At first glance, one might imagine that the frills and horns were primarily defensive, shields flaring up to fend off fierce attacks. Indeed, fossil evidence shows that many ceratopsian skulls bear healed puncture wounds, suggesting they engaged in head to head clashes, perhaps for dominance, territory, or courtship. Yet, the horns and frills were likely not mere weapons. The blood vessels running just beneath the surface of the frill indicate that it could flush with color, a living spectacle to attract mates, warn rivals, or assert status. The visual impact may have been so strong that these ornaments functioned as species identifiers. A Styracosaurus with alternating spikes, another with concave edges, recognizable at a glance, even from afar. Meanwhile, in the world of living armor, the ankylosaurs were mobile fortresses. Their osteoderms, thick bony plates covering their backs and hips, were sometimes dense enough to provide active defense. Research has revealed that these armor plates were not simple shields, but complex structures, compact bone, spongy bone, and collagen networks combining strength with manageable weight. .pan.pl +2 ResearchGate. The tails of many ankylosaurs ended in solid bony clubs, capable when swung of delivering devastating blows to predators. In the genus Ankylosaurus, the club could even fracture bone. Wikipedia. Yet nature rarely allows such features to exist in isolation. Armor was not solely for protection. New evolutionary models suggest that it could also serve display, communication, or even thermoregulation purposes. When light hit the keratin-covered plates at an angle, they could glint like polished metal, shimmering with the observer's perspective. Thus, in many species, the armor and horns became a visual language, a way to assert identity within the herd or to warn outsiders. ZSL Publications +1. This multifunctionality becomes clearer when we look inside the fossils, at their internal structure. Within ankylosaur armor, thin layers of compact bone were combined with thick spongy bone and dense collagen, an engineering solution for strength without excess weight. Remarkably, the smaller armor plates initially shared similar structures, but later diversified into spikes, large shields, and specialized clubs. app.pan.pl. Researchers suggest that in some species, the armor may have first evolved for display, later hardened into weaponry or shielding as predator pressure increased. Geoscience World +1. Both ceratopsians and ankylosaurs demonstrate that decoration and defense go hand in hand, not excluding but reinforcing each other. In a herd of grazing ceratopsians, the frilled crests rise like banners, sunlight filtering through each ridge and vein, every individual a living artwork. Others look on and recognize, that one is my ally, or that one is my rival. As the herd moves, the colors and contours ripple through the light, a visual symphony between nature and life. Under the pale moonlight, the sight of a herd of ankylosaurs moving through the shadows is breathtaking. Their armored backs glint faintly, square ridges reflecting the dim glow, and for anyone witnessing it, the creature's subtle swaying and tail motions convey readiness, not as beasts, but as steadfast warriors maintaining formation. Look closer, and you might see the clubs sweep through the air like a warning. Do not come closer. For tens of millions of years, ceratopsians and ankylosaurs crafted their armor and ornaments as living art. These traits were not merely for combat, but for survival, in communication, in herd dynamics, in mate selection, in predator deterrence, and in spatial dominance. They stand as proof that dinosaur evolution was not just a struggle for existence, but a design language, a declaration of identity, and a connection between being and environment. When night falls over the plains of the Cretaceous, the first sounds that rise are not the breath of the wind or the chirping of insects, but the soft footsteps of predators. A shadow glides across the ground, cast under the pale moonlight. It is a theropod, a creature that embodies the perfect balance between strength and strategy, between instinct and intelligence. If the hadrosaur represents patience and cooperation, then the theropod stands for calculation and constant adaptation. For more than 100 million years, they held their position as apex predators, not merely through claws or fangs, but because they knew how to change. With each geological era, their forms and behaviors shifted like the changing face of the Earth itself. Among them, the velociraptor has always captivated both scientists and the public. Unlike the giant seen in cinema, the real animal measured just over 2 meters long, light as a hunting dog, but covered in fine feathers, proof of the deep evolutionary link between dinosaurs and modern birds. Their feathers were not just for warmth, but perhaps for social display or courtship rituals, much like how male birds today flaunt their colorful plumage. The sickle-shaped claws on each foot were symbols of ferocity, not only to slash, but to grip and hold prey alive for a few seconds before delivering the final strike. At a higher scale, species such as Allosaurus or Tyrannosaurus rex represented another school of power. No need for speed, no need for fancy feathers, just one decisive bite. T-Rex had the most powerful bite force of any land animal that ever lived, estimated at over 35,000 newtons. Its jaws did not merely crush bone. Its inward curving, cone-shaped teeth turned each bite into a trap from which there was no escape. Yet, what makes theropods truly fascinating is not just their muscle power. Fossil evidence shows well-developed neural structures in the olfactory lobes and visual regions, suggesting that many species could track prey using both smell and keen vision. Their forward-facing eyes allowed for stereoscopic vision, meaning they could perceive depth and distance accurately, a vital skill when sprinting at high speeds to strike. Perhaps most surprising of all was the intelligence and social behavior shown by many theropods. Fossilized trackways suggest they may have hunted in groups, coordinating to drive prey in a single direction, behavior typical of modern mammals but rare among reptiles. Larger individuals may have led the chase while smaller ones flanked or attacked the prey's weak points. Some studies indicate they even shared food, at least temporarily, evidence of early communal behavior. From an evolutionary perspective, theropods were not only hunters, but the ancestors of modern birds. Over millions of years, their hollow bones, shortened forelimbs, and feathers, once used for insulation or display, evolved into instruments of flight. From within the lineage of predators arose the freest beings of the sky. If T-Rex symbolized the strength of the earth, then Archaeopteryx, the first feathered dinosaur, embodied the longing to rise above it. But not all theropods were carnivores. Some evolved to eat insects, fish, or even soft plants. Evolution does not only reward the strong, it favors the adaptable. This very diversity ensured that theropods never truly went extinct. Part of them still lives today in the form of the small birds perched outside your window. Watch an owl or a hawk hunting and you'll see the faint reflection of the theropod, the focused eyes, the precise twist of the body, the swift strike, and the bite of the beak. The way they spread their wings before diving mirrors how velociraptors once extended feathered arms for balance. Time may erase continents, but it cannot erase evolutionary heritage. What moves us when we look back at the world of theropods is not only their ferocity, but the intelligence and emotion they evoke. Perhaps in moments of hunting or defending their territory, these creatures too knew fear, cooperation, and recognition of their kind. Some fossil evidence shows they cared for their nests, using their bodies to shield their young like a living shelter. That proves that, amid the brutality of the Cretaceous, there was still the tenderness of parental instinct. And when their era ended beneath the dust and ash of an asteroid, their legacy did not vanish. It lives on in every morning birdsong, in the sharp gaze of an owl, and in the heartbeat of life itself. We may no longer hear the roar of T-Rex, but whenever a flock of sparrows takes flight together, perhaps somewhere, the echo of theropod footsteps still resonates in the rhythm of existence. Theropods teach us a lesson. True strength lies not only in fangs and claws, but in the ability to change, ruthless yet refined, powerful yet cooperative. It is precisely for that reason that their lineage never truly disappeared. It merely changed shape, changed name, and continues to soar across the skies of Earth.